Welcome to the Real Estate Investing Podcast, where we help you unlock your potential freedom through land investing, real estate investing, and entrepreneurship. Hey everyone, this is episode 76 of the Real Estate Investing Podcast, discussing choosing new markets to invest in. I'm your host, Daniel Apke, joined by my brother and business partner, Ron Apke. Before we get into that, let's go over a question from one of our featured members in our Discord. Question for today is from Steve. I'm currently getting overwhelmed with callbacks, and majority of them aren't interested in selling their land. I keep looking into properties before I call back, and it wastes a lot of my time. What should I do in this situation to save time and efficiency?
Good question. It's very normal to dig into deals too much before they're actually deals, and dig into leads like that. Like a lot of sellers are going to call you back if you're angry. I assume you have an answering service if you can look at the properties prior to calling them back. So don't like that's my best solution is go into it, gauge their interest, maybe have your laptop up as you are talking to them and pull the deal up as you're talking to them. And then like you can get talking if it's really good land, then you can negotiate some. If it's bad land, like you can let them know, like, listen, this is landlocked. This is really wet property, whatever it is. And go from there. That's the easiest thing. And people do get wrapped into this quite a bit. I know we have at times, but right now, like if you just don't have the time to do it, like you're going to, once you keep sending enough mail, you're just not going to have enough time to do that. So you're going to have to be more efficient with that side of things. And if you get wrapped into the potential of a deal before you've even talked to a seller, like there's just no value in that in my mind.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm training a new salesman right now, so we kind of see this firsthand. Like you can get, and we're training him not only on, making these callbacks, but we also are training him on analyzing a deal. And there's a fine line between actually looking at it briefly, calling, and actually how much work you put into looking. You don't want to start looking at where's the access. Start looking for deeds. Some people pull deeds before. They're calling the counties before. Like you do not want to do your due diligence before getting the purchase agreement back. Just call them. Don't even think about it. Just call them, pull it up when you're calling them, like Ron said. All right, other than that, let's get into the show. Today's topic, choosing new real estate markets to invest in. I think first, Ron, you just have to kind of decide what you're looking to buy. I mean, this is a real estate podcast. We are heavily focused in land. But in terms of, rental properties, commercial properties, land, anything, you got to choose a market first. Like it can be a wide market, I think, Ron. We told a coaching student that yesterday, I believe. Like just choose the state or area or region and then go from there.
Yeah, for sure. It's not something like if you're trying to buy rental properties, commercial properties, I think you want to get extremely specific and it shouldn't be as wide. If we're talking land, and I want to kind of separate this, Dan, so we can talk about two separate things. I do think you attack it differently. If we're talking about land, like you can choose a whole region. Like I could choose the Northeast and hit New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, all that stuff, and be very successful with that mindset. If not, like if you're doing it in a different way and doing it, trying to find commercial properties, whatever it is, you want to get a lot more detail on the individual market. But yeah, I 100% agree, Dan. Like you don't want to, in terms of land, you definitely don't want to overthink this process. I think there's different strategies. There are different strategies if you're doing this for other property types as well.
Yeah, exactly. And for real estate investing, or for commercial rentals and things like that, Ron, the Midwest is a really common. You don't want to be in areas unless you got stupid money and you have a lot of connections. You don't want to be in those too hot of markets, or too high of markets like San Francisco and the Bay Area. So you just got to use some common sense with where you're investing. The Sun Belt's great. The Midwest is great. There's some up Northeast. You can really do real estate investing anywhere though, Ron.
For sure. Like there isn't for land, especially like we tell students all the time, like they try to ask us like, where's coaching students in particular try to ask us like, where should I start? Like, or do you see people be more successful in a certain region? Like, no, you can literally do this anywhere. There's real estate everywhere, whether it's Alaska or Florida, and everywhere in between. Like there is real estate to be purchased and it all comes down to buying at the right price. And the advantage is, and we talk about it quite a bit, the advantage is really learning a market. If you can become extremely knowledgeable about a market, know the relationship, know the realtors, know the title companies, know how fast you can close on a deal once you get it under contract. If you can be really good with those relationships, understanding the comps and the market as it changes, then you can make so much money in one individual market, even one city, whether it's land or other property types.
Yeah, your education and kind of knowledge of the markets compounds, I think, to make you more future money. There's a quote by Warren Buffett actually on that, how your knowledge is future money or something. Education's future money. So the more you invest in one specific area, the easier it's going to get for that area, the more deals you're going to be able to find, the more connections you're going to have in that area. So things do compound. But for a land course, Ron and I teach a really unique process of kind of digging up. We have a regular module and then an advanced module in the course. So if you're a member, you have access to both of those. But it's really about finding a balance, Ron, and land on a balance of not too hot and not too slow of markets. You don't want either of those. Not too hot markets, especially at first, because markets that are too hot are tougher to acquire, and markets that are too slow are going to sit forever. So it's finding that median ground, I think.
hmm I for sure like land. You don't want it too slow, especially as the market might be changing a little more to a buyer's market. You don't want to be in slow markets because it's going to the days on market are going to be even increasing as we go through 2022 and 20 into 2023. I would think as the market flips a little bit. Um, so yeah, finding those little hidden markets that are really rural, but they have some interest for whatever reason. And you'll find those as you run numbers and as you see whatever population growth, people moving to a certain area for whatever reason. There's usually a reason behind it, but finding those not in the middle of a big city and finding those whatever 3 hours outside of a big city, 2 hours outside of a big city, that's where we see our members make hundreds of thousands of dollars in a single market.
Yeah, and we look a lot, and this goes for both sides, land and real estate. We really like to look at what properties are selling for. We don't necessarily want to start with 5 acres that's going for 500 grand, but maybe 5 acres going for 50 grand or 90 grand or something, or 25 grand. So we look at that a lot. And if we're looking at rental properties, Ron, we look at, I'm not going to look at a duplex in, trying to think of a very expensive area, a duplex in Miami, Florida for 1.3 million dollars. Like that's not going to be that appealing to me. There is money there, but it's just not as appealing. We'd like to look at maybe a duplex in Cleveland or somewhere Midwest market or outside Atlanta, Georgia for 250 grand or so. There's money to be made at both ends, but the higher you go like that, 5 acres for 500 grand, the more work it's going to take to acquire. There's a lot of money to be made there. But for new coaching students, Ron, we always tell them we want to give them the best shot to get the most amount of deals, and that's just not where that lies.
For sure. And that's something I've been talking about a ton in these coaching calls is look what 5 acres is selling for, like a normal 5 acre parcel is selling for. If it's above $80,000, let's find a new market. If it's, I don't really have a number where if it's below Dan, like if it's above, but I don't want to be at that 5 acres selling for 120, $140,000. I think it gets way too expensive. And the acquisition process, you already as a new investor have so much to learn, getting in those negotiations with these people who own 5 acres and you're trying to offer 60, $70,000, it becomes really tough because that land, if something's wrong with that 5 acres, Dan, and it might not go for $140,000, it might be worth 110,000 or something like that. And we talk about that a lot on the small properties like 1 acre and lower than 1 acres. Like the little things that could be wrong with that land can affect the price a ton. It's the same thing as you get into the high price points on these 5 acre properties. But what about we can talk about us personally, Dan, because we always are changing markets in terms of physical properties and stuff like that. What I know you said kind of middle of the road markets, growing markets. For me personally, with commercial stuff, like I want to be in growing markets, not necessarily the biggest, the Austin, Texas, the Tampa, the St. Pete, whatever it is, the Miami, Fort Lauderdale. Not necessarily that, but I want to be in markets that I see a reason for people to move there.
Yeah, for long-term growth and sustainability, I'd rather pay a little bit extra, maybe personally for me, instead of paying 80% in a slower market like Detroit, maybe pay 90 to 100% in a fast market like Miami, or Fort Lauderdale or something like that, or Atlanta, Georgia, where that long-term appreciation, the Sun Belt's moving like that. You're going to get that appreciation. They're good markets, they're sustainable markets. There's two different techniques. I mean, you can go up and go to slower markets and get better deals. There's going to be less demand there for sure, and you should get lower prices because of that, and lower offer percentages of the market value, I think, because of that. So both methods do work. It's about finding that middle ground. You don't want to be in the hottest area um, of Fort Lauderdale necessarily, because you're just not going to be able to find a good deal because everyone and their mother wants to be there. But that middle ground, what about 10 minutes removed from there, 5 minutes removed from there? Or these neighborhoods that go, like I said earlier, on neighborhood by neighborhood with rental properties. So I think just finding that middle ground, something that's going to be good in 10, 20 years. Don't just think of this year. One of my pet peeves, Ron, is people who are analyzing these deals based on now. And I see this a lot with Airbnbs. Everyone's analyzing all these properties with Airbnb number. Airbnbs are 10 years old. Like, if you're looking at a sustainable business based off the last 10 years, um, you don't know what's going to happen with Airbnb. Airbnb can go belly up. They haven't made a profit, neither has Uber. But I'm not saying it doesn't work. It does work right now, but you need to make sure you have a backup there, like long-term rentals, monthly rentals, whatever it is, 6-month rentals, 12-month rentals. You have to make sure it's sustainable, because when the Airbnb comes down, or the government crashes down on them and puts more restrictions and starts enforcing it, like in St. Pete, they don't allow Airbnbs, but everyone does it anyways. They might start giving notices and fines or whatnot. That might happen. So just really making sure you're solid in every market, I think, is important, Ron.
Yeah, I think like you're saying, like so many people look at what it's going to cash flow today, and I'm not saying I do not agree with taking a negative cash flow or even breaking even on a 30-year mortgage with an apartment complex or something like that. But look at what you think that cash flow is going to be in 10 years. Like you said, if you're in Detroit, maybe you're cash flowing whatever $500 per door on a 10 unit or something like that right now, but you're going to be cash flowing $500, $600 per door in 10 years, and the appreciation is going to be almost flat. Whether you go into these markets that are growing, whether it's like Charlotte, Huntsville, Chattanooga, these southeast ones that are growing, people are moving to, that have less restrictions on stuff like that. Um, there's cities in South Carolina that people are flocking to. It's hard in those, like I'm not as up on those, like really. It's so hard to get a property right now, Dan, in those hot markets, Fort Lauderdale, Miami, Austin, stuff like that. But these markets that are growing, Nashville 10, 12 years ago, like think about a property there. Charlotte 5 years ago, stuff like that. Austin, what, 8 years ago, Dan? Like if you find these markets, like you can make a ton of money. Your cash flow is going to be so incredible 10 years down the line. It's not an easy thing picking the market, because so many politics, stuff like that, go into what is going to happen in the next 10, 15 years. But if you can find those markets, there's so much value appreciation on top of that additional cash flow.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, I like to look at it like 20, and for long term sake. I mean, if there's different business models and everything, Ron. So if you're flipping a house, you look more now, obviously. But for rental purposes and refinancing out, you just have to look in the future. You have to believe in it. Look 10 years, 20 years down the line, where you think that's going to be. Somewhere like, Cincinnati's been a safe market, Ron. Cleveland's been a safe market. They're not going to skyrocket like Atlanta and Charlotte are, like you're saying. But like we say, like this, there's within those markets, there's even hot markets too. So you got to get more, like with rentals, like we're saying, Ron. You have to look more than just the whole city. Dive into the city. Where do you want to go with it in the city? Like in Cincinnati, places like the Blue Ash of the world, Westchesters of the world. Different places like that, you have to dive in even more. And that's kind of, we talked about realtor relations, and that's where those relationships and everything will get you, I think.
Yep. I think it's going to be pretty, like those Midwest, like being from a Midwest city, like I don't think appreciation is going to be flat, but I think it's pretty predictable. Where you have those growth cities where they might be pricing a little bit for future growth, but you have a potential of like a steep increase in appreciation and stuff like that. And then you also, I think those are the three main ones, Dan. Like the ones that are going to be pretty flat, they're going to appreciate. Detroit's going to appreciate. It's not going to be much. You have the ones that have the potential for really steep appreciation, that haven't hit that growth. And then you have the ones that already are really popular. You're probably not going to get as much cash flow up front, but you're going to have a really hot area that it's already hot, and who knows about the future growth. But
Yeah.
I don't know. That's how I look at it. I haven't done much outside of Cincinnati in terms of physical properties, because I know this area so well, and you can get so niche into particular areas within a city. Just like I can get niche within Ohio and picking a city within Ohio, I can go deeper into Cincinnati, like Daniel said, and pick there are individual markets in each city, areas you want to stay away from, areas that are growing.
Yeah, exactly. And we're talking, I mean, when we're looking at for land, things like days on market, we look at day and for this is for rentals as well and whatever. But we look at things like days on market, sold versus for sale. I urge you to go on and look at days on market in an area like Fort Lauderdale and then look at it in an area like Detroit. And look at the average prices and things like that. Just play around with the Redfin data run. I really urge that because that can really help you kind of navigate where you want to be. And you're probably going to end up finding a middle ground, something not too hot, something not too slow, like we're talking about. Um, but sold versus for sale, like how many properties are selling versus how many properties are for sale? If in Fort Lauderdale, there's 10 properties for sale, um, but there's 5,000 that sold, that those for sales are in extreme demand because there's not a lot of them and they're all sold. Price per acre, price per square foot, things like that. You want to look at. That's what we look at in our land course. We teach all that. What are well priced properties selling for, and then you want to look at like the saves they're getting, things like that. Ron, the views and saves they're getting on Zillow. So if you think 5 acres is going for 50 grand, and 5 acres is for 50 grand in Hamilton County, Ohio, Ron, how many saves is that getting? Is that supposed to be selling? How long has it been on the market? What has 5 grand sold for 50 grand? And how long did that take? Look at the sold, all that stuff that we teach in the course, Ron.
Yep. And I think we're throwing a lot at them, Dan. So my suggestion is picking what you want your kind of niche to be within this, with not necessarily land. If I'm talking about physical properties right now, or buildings or structures, you got to pick what type of market you want to be in. Maybe that's not your market long term, but have that mindset. Like, I'm not trying to be in 6 markets right now. Like, I'm going to really learn this market. I want to be in a, I want to take a chance and try to find a really fast appreciating market, or I want to be in a steady market and find a plan for that. Because if you go to, like you said, Fort Lauderdale, Dan, and your strategy is I want to buy things at 70% of market value, well, I'm sorry to tell you, you're probably not going to find many of those.
Yeah,
Versus you go to
everyone does.
Detroit and you go to Detroit and start making offers at 70%, you'll probably get one that accepts it this week or next week.
Yeah.
So it's just a different mindset. Like, at the end of the day, the deal is the most important thing. But don't spread yourself too thin with different ideas in there. Gauge what you actually want out of the business and go full force, I think.
And I think the more established you get in one area, the more likely you are to get that 70% deal in Fort Lauderdale. Like, for example, Ron, this extreme example, but Grant Cardone, he has all those connections in Miami and Fort Lauderdale and just all those. He's going to get deals at 70% most likely just because his connections and network. Like, once you become the bank and you build all those connections, Ron, that's why being in one market or specializing in a couple markets, Ron, is so crucial because you get those relationships, you get those deals, you find a lot, um, than just spreading yourself too thin, I think.
Yep. Not many people can make those 70, $100 million deals happen. And they know when like his offer comes in and like it's a low due diligence offer and stuff like that, he definitely can get the money for it. That's no doubt. If he likes it. And that's the advantage in having like that relationship aspect and the reach that he has in particular.
Yeah, exactly. That's all I really have. We threw a lot. There's a lot in this. Some people might need to go back and listen twice, but it's all about finding that middle ground. I feel like you can do it in any market. If there's one thing I want you to take, it's you can do real estate investing and land investing really anywhere, like we said earlier. Do you have anything to add, Ron?
No, I think that was really good. Like you said, there's a lot thrown at you guys, but pick a market, pick a niche that you want, a niche within a market, and go all in. I think is the best advice I can give.
Yep, exactly. Well, thank you guys for joining. To get started and to unlock your potential freedom, visit landinvestingonline.com. Make sure to join our free Discord where Ryan and I are involved and a ton of other successful investors. Guys, if you got any value from this, we really appreciate if you subscribe and liked our YouTube channel, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever you guys are listening or watching on. It really means a lot. Other than that, thanks for joining. We'll see you next episode.
Thanks, guys.